I think one of the most important things for everybody to be able to say to themselves, knowing they're being completely honest, is I can do hard things. Well, this episode has been long in the making, and it's the reason being is because it's something I've talked about a few times actually in previous podcast episodes, but I've just kind of grazed the surface of it, and I want to jump a lot deeper into this topic today. And the topic is that you can do hard things. No matter who you are, no matter what your background is, you can do hard things. And I know I have mentioned it before, but there's a lot to that, and there's a lot that we're going to discuss about this specifically today. But it's something that I've kind of been drawn to. I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? Like, you can do hard things. Everyone kind of says that, right? Everyone says like, oh man, no matter if you're struggling right now, you're going through a hard time, just keep pushing, just keep going. There's a lot of truth to that, but I think there's more to the story than just pushing through. I think if you're going to be successful in getting through a hard time in your life, it's going to be you going through it with the best of your ability and documenting the lessons that you have learned. And it might sound weird. It might be something that's kind of new to you, but I promise that as you do it, that you'll gain something from it and that you will learn and become better. That's ultimately what doing hard things does for you, is it teaches you that you can always be better. And there's a lot of things that I think we try and do too hard on ourselves, right? Like we try and put ourselves out of the comfort zone, give up on it, and then kind of beat ourselves up. Or, we try and start it, maybe it's a new diet, and we're pretty accurate with sticking to the diet for, maybe it's a couple weeks, and then you really want that ice cream sundae, and you slip up and you feel bad about yourself, and then you just give up. But that is a story that is not uncommon. I've been subject to that so many times in my life where I've tried to do something, realized it's difficult, and then given up. And it's something that I recognized in myself. I don't know when, but I realized I had that habit where I would start something hard and realize that it was challenging and give up. And one example of that is like when I first started playing, I played volleyball all throughout my high school years. And when I first started that, I was in about like sixth grade. So I was some little kid. This is back when Fat Brett was in his prime. But when I first started, I absolutely hated it because it was like my coach would make me run. And, being a chubby little kid, it was not easy for me to run. But I'd have to run every day and I'd end practice and be like, man, I don't like this. This is not fun. I have to be disciplined. I have to, show up. I have to do all these difficult things and that I'm not used to. And it's something that is new to me and it's a challenge. And I remember in sixth grade, I was like, I hate this. And so I played for one season and quit. And it wasn't until eighth grade that I jumped back into it because my brothers loved it. And I'm grateful for their example being like, hey, you know what? You need to try something difficult and you got to at least push yourself in some aspect. And in volleyball, they all played it. And I was like, you know what? I kind of want to be like my brothers. And so I jumped back into to training, and I ended up finding a lot of love for the sport. And unfortunately, I couldn't play my senior year because I had a shoulder injury, but I was fully bought into it and I loved it. But I gave up at the initial part. And so with that in mind, like if I didn't come back to it, I would have never discovered my love for the sport or that team camaraderie that you gain anytime that you're a part of a team sport. Like you develop these relationships with the people on your team and you trust them and all these awesome and amazing things that go into playing sports. But I would have never guessed if I didn't try again. And that's a story that I've heard too many times. And I want to challenge anyone who's listening to this to maybe take a step back and and think about the things that they want to accomplish. Like, what do you want to accomplish in your life? What are some things that you want to try that are scary, but you still want to get them done? These should be some things that you're thinking about. But the reason I wanted to talk about this today mainly is because I was listening to a podcast from Cam Hanes, and he had Andrew Huberman on. And Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist. He's a genius guy. If you haven't heard Andrew Huberman, you should probably go listen to him, because he can really help with like anxiety, mental states, those kind of things. He has just really interesting information on his pages. So I would say check him out. But Cam and Andrew, they were talking. And one thing that Cam does anytime that he has a podcast episode with someone is he does something called a lift, run, shoot. And part of the lift, run, shoot is they carry this 73-pound rock up a mountain. And they carry it the entire time. And I think it's like a 6 mile up, so 12 miles total. Anyway, so they're carrying this giant boulder, and they're talking about this in this podcast. And they're like, yeah, like it's just difficult. Like it's hard. But I do want to quote part of his podcast where they're discussing like the mindset of doing difficult things and what that does for you in regular day life. So Cameron says, I just think that when you go through real challenges and the heartaches of life, it's a little like, even though it sucks carrying the rock up the mountain, that's going to be over. He says that's not lasting for more than an hour. So it's like when you've been through real pain, you can compartmentalize and say, this isn't whatever, I was going through. This is temporary. I'm good. So it's like, that kind of going through to question is like, yeah, I've hurt. I've been in pain. I've been lonely. And this isn't that. I can get through this, and I can get through this long run, even if it's a race of 3 days, 200 miles, it's going to be over, and it's not that bad. So that was Cameron. And then Andrew responds, and this is what I really want to focus on. He says, yeah, I think one of the most important things for everybody to be able to say to themselves, knowing they're being completely honest, is I can do hard things. If it gets tough, I know I can do it because I've done it. And I know, and then he like goes into the fact that you can't ask a 2-year-old to do this, but he jumps back later into saying, he says, if I had my way also, everyone would be able to experience something hopefully not so damaging that they're permanently scarred and dissolve into a puddle of their own tears. But they can say, I can do hard things. And I know that to be a fact, not just a mantra, because I've done hard things. And that's it. But that's where this idea came from, is like, you can do hard things. Like, you've had life experiences that have probably tested you to your limits, whether that be emotional challenges, physical challenges. It could be an illness, or you might have gotten injured. It could be family relationship challenges. You could be lonely. Like, so many difficult things that people go through on a regular basis. Those are hard. Those are so hard. But there's so much benefit in taking those memories and those things that you experience in life and applying them to things like challenging your body physically or studying more. Whatever that is to you, like, just don't be afraid to do the hard, difficult challenge, and don't shy away when things get difficult, because that's when you grow. When you push through that adversity and you figure out, you know what, this is who I am. I've done hard things in the past that have tested me to my limits. I can get through whatever challenge is ahead of me because I know it's not going to last. This is something I've talked to Allie a lot about, and she's asked me a few times, like, how do you just run on a treadmill for 2 hours? And like, how do you do that? And I always tell her, it's like, well, no matter what, I know it's going to end. Like, it's 2 hours of my day that'll go by, And then for the rest of the day, I'll think back and be like, man, I'm proud of what I was able to do, just sticking through and enduring on a treadmill. But no, everything is it's going to end. This life is not, we're not going to be here forever. And with that in mind, like, would you want to live a life where you're just kind of getting by doing the easy stuff? Or do you want to live a life where you're challenging yourself and pushing yourself to discover what your limits are and discover who you can become? That's the kind of life I'm excited about. To that same point, this week I signed up for my first ultra marathon race, which is in Monticello, Utah. It's a 50K, so it's about 30 miles. But the elevation gain that entire race is about 6,500 feet. And so I know I've talked a lot about like training for a sub-3 marathon, which I'll be running in February. But like, I want to see what else I'm capable of. I want to see what that kind of race is like. Like, I'll be hiking in one of the most beautiful parts of the US. And like, that's going to be a blessing. But I know it's going to be a difficult challenge. But to Cam's point, I know it's going to end. Like, it might suck at the time, but no matter what, like, it'll come to an end. Like, I'll be able to sit up and put my feet up and probably go get a massage or something. I don't know. But there's a danger in staying in the comfort zone, I think, because that can lead to stagnation. That can lead to you just accepting things that come to you. And I never want people to feel like they're ever stuck in a hole. Like, I think a lot of the holes that we dig for ourselves are because we want to be comfortable. We want to be complacent. We want easy things, right? And doing the hard thing is the hard thing. Discipline, in my opinion, this is what discipline is. Discipline is doing the hard choice every single day, no matter what. If you're disciplined enough to stick to something, even through the difficult like parts of it, and you have to just show up every day, that's what discipline is. I'll tell you what, it's like with the weather getting cold, it's getting so much harder waking up every day to go to the gym. But I know that that's the first battle I have to win every single day. I have to show up and give my best effort there, because then I know, like, whatever comes, I can handle it because I've pushed myself and I've learned. So discipline is just choosing the difficult choice every time. And you don't want to be in your comfort zone, because I think what that does to you is it decreases your confidence. It doesn't allow you to develop your skills anymore. And like I said, it leads to stagnation, which leads to no personal growth. And so I'd contrast that and just be like, you know what? If anything, if there's an opportunity that you get excited about and you want to try, then you should go for it. And you should be willing to embrace whatever challenges come your way. And when those challenges do come, then there's a few things that you can be doing. So I would say, first and foremost, set an achievable goal. Like, don't go all out. Don't try and say like, oh, I'm going to make $1 million in 3 months. Start with something a little bit more realistic. But identify what your challenge is. And that, again, could be a physical challenge, a mental challenge, or something like with your skills. If you want to get better at, computer programming, maybe something like that. But identify what your goal is, because that'll help you at least get an idea of where you want to start from. And then you need to build these habits of daily discipline and start by small daily actions. Like, don't go crazy here, because if you go crazy and you go all out, you're going to lead to burnout. And that's going to, like I said, it's going to be like me in volleyball when I was a little kid. I'm going to quit. And you don't want to quit. You don't want to be someone who's known as a quitter. You want to be someone who's known that you can do hard things. And when you're going through these difficult challenges, like, try and be a little bit more mindful. Realize that it's like, tell yourself things like, hey, I'm just getting started. I need to be patient with myself. I have to realize that this is going to be a process. It's going to take time. That's okay. And when that happens too, like, rely on the community, whoever that community is. But go and ask other people who have done the thing that you want to do and see what they did to push through their challenges. And when you reach certain milestones during your journey, you should celebrate them. You should get excited about them. You should be proud of yourself. Like today, I had a 16-mile run, and that's something that I haven't done before in the past. It's just like a training run 16 miles. And so I know it's like a little step in the right direction, but I'm proud of myself for that. Like that was hard. That was not an easy thing to do. It took me 2 hours and 10 minutes. Like that's a long time, but I was able to do it, and I was able to be consistent with it. And it's something that I think you just have to be mindful of as you're going through this process. Just realize it's going to take time. Realize that, you know what, it's okay, and just give yourself a little grace. It's almost like the story of the mountain climber, right? Everyone's kind of heard this, but there's someone who wants to go climb a mountain, and despite fear of failure or injuries, this guy just decides to go climb a mountain anyway. He's going to challenge this mountain, and he's learning lessons of resiliency. Eventually, the guy gets to the top of the mountain, and he's like, you know what? I was able to accomplish that, and now look at this view. I was trying to explain this story to a bunch of little kids. I teach in my church, and I was trying to tell them, like, what's something hard that you guys have had to do? A hike is maybe something hard, and all these kids are like, no, hikes are so easy. And I'm like, okay, well, let me try and explain it to you. But I was pretty much just trying to tell them, you're going to be struggling going up the mountain. You're going to be finding ways that you've put yourself that you really haven't before. And you might sit down for a while you're walking up the mountain. You might be really tired. You might need some water. You might, cry a couple times. You might shed a few tears because this is all new and it's difficult, and that's okay. But once you reach the top of the mountain, you're going to breathe beautiful mountain air. You're going to look over a gorgeous view of wherever you're at, and you should take some pride in that, and you should feel good about it. Anyways, these kids did not relate, but that's okay. I know my analogies aren't always the best, so thank you, kids. But where this idea of you can do hard things really came into my life was through the Team Tim race that my wife runs every year for her dad. And Tim was someone who always challenged people that they can push themselves beyond their limits, that they can do hard things, that they can gain confidence knowing that they can push themselves, right? And I've said this quote so many times on this podcast, but it's one that I will take to my grave because I love it. And it's confidence comes from building an undeniable stack of proof that you are who you say you are. And if you're doing hard things, if you're challenging yourself, if you're pushing yourself beyond your limits, your confidence is going to grow. And that was Tim's philosophy, was if you want to gain some confidence, go do something difficult. And that is a philosophy I stand behind as well, because I've tried that so many times. I've tried to push myself, and I've tried to challenge myself in all these physical pursuits that I'm doing, or mental pursuits that I'm doing, professional things. And every time that I prove myself that I can get through it and I can prove myself right, then I gain confidence. And then whatever comes next is like just another challenge that I have the frameworks to go about and focus on. But going back to Team Tim, that's the race, like I said, is ran every year in honor of Tim Murphy. And traditionally it's a half marathon. So a group of people will come together and we'll all go out and run a half marathon. But the whole goal of it is to prove to every single person that does the race that they can do hard things, and that together we can support each other. And so that's what I was saying, like, reach out to a community. The community of the Team Tim race is anyone that runs or anyone that supports it and joins. And so, like, the night before the race, we'll all talk. We'll be like, yeah, I'm kind of nervous about it, but hey, this helps me when I'm on a run. Or, hey, you know what? that sounds like a good strategy. You should try this too. And so like we're all giving each other tips and tricks and ultimately just trying to make it easier for everyone to finish the race and realize that they can accomplish more than they think that they can. There's so much joy that comes from like crossing the finish line and then seeing all your friends and people that you care about and loved ones who are there supporting you and all in the same boat together, doing hard things together, challenging themselves together. And I'm not saying that you have to go out and run a half marathon. I'm not saying that you have to try and go climb a mountain or anything like that. But if there's something small that you want to go do to start and prove to yourself that you can do difficult challenges and that you are who you say you are, then you should at least try and start. Because life is about getting better and becoming who you know that you can become. And who you thought you would be when you were 7 years old thinking about what you wanted to do with your life. All these people who wanted to be an astronaut and didn't. I'm sure they could have if they tried, but I'm sure it was hard. And so that's my point is I just want you to know that you can do hard things. It doesn't matter what your background is. Some people's backgrounds are going to be worse than others. Some people are given a pretty nice life. But you can take those challenges, learn from them, learn from your experiences, and then apply them to things like running or lifting in the gym. Maybe you want to be a bodybuilder. Or, hey, I'm going to study and get a promotion at work. I'm going to push myself there. Hey, I need to be better with my family. I need to spend more time with them. It might be challenging. I'll have to sacrifice a few things. You know, these could be just stories that you're telling yourself. But know that when you do overcome something difficult, you're going to gain some confidence. You're going to feel better about it. You're going to, know that no matter what, you can get through difficult challenges. So that's one thing that I know I talk so much about running on this podcast, but I think it's such a great metaphor for life. And it's because that it's never easy. Like, of course, some days are easier than others. Maybe I'm more well rested, more fed, but it never gets easy. It's not something that is, any expert runner is going to say that it takes effort in training to do. But those experiences teach me that, you know what, all things end. Like Cam says, this isn't going to last. I can push through this race, even if it's 200 miles. It's going to end. And when you're done, you gain a little bit more confidence. You feel good. Your mind's like, whoo, hey, that was good. That was a good run. You just have good little experiences like that. And so it's a great metaphor for life because then you can also see your progress. Like if you're consistent with it, if you stay disciplined, then you'll see how much faster you get, how much more endurance that you have, how much like you might start liking it or anything like that. And I think the reason why it's a good metaphor for life is because you can apply that principle to most things in life, whether that be your job, whether that be your family. Like you're going to go through struggles together, but if you're able to be consistent, if you're able to stay disciplined, if you're able to maintain what your focus and your vision is, then you'll be successful and you'll be able to get through it and you'll learn from it too. Anything that you do that's difficult is going to teach you lessons that you'll be able to apply in other aspects of your life. That's something I know for a fact. Because these physical things that I do, I can take the lessons that I learned from them and say, okay, well, I'm having a pretty crappy mental day today, but I know it's going to end. I know this day will end and tomorrow's going to be a better one. Or if it's something like, dang, work is just difficult right now. Maybe I need to study a little bit more so I can sell this software better. Okay, well, I'm going to have to set up a time where I stay after work. I ask questions. I study the materials and I know I can get through that. I just have to endure the process. And this goes back to one of my favorite quotes from Nick Bare, where he talks about what endurance means to him. And this is what he says: endurance is an outcome forged by those who are wise enough to endure the process. So when that process gets difficult, you know that you can push through and you're wise enough to stick with it, because it'll end. That hard time will end. You just have to be consistent and you have to stick to it. So that's my main message today, is no matter what you're going through, it will end. And you could do hard things. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm proud that you're challenging yourself. You're pushing yourself. You're putting yourself out there. But when those hard times come, you need to be wise enough to be like, hey, this is going to end. I'll be able to get through this. Because I promise you, if you're able to just stick with it, if you're able to just push yourself a little bit more and you're able to be consistent, you'll learn lessons that will just provide 10x value than what you think. And it'll surprise you, honestly. So you can do hard things. Doesn't matter who you are. If you need some support during whatever hard, difficult challenge that you're feeling, by all means, rely on me. Or build a community. Do whatever you need to do to get through it. But I promise you, once you get through your hard challenge, your difficulty, whatever you want to call it, you endure the process, you'll gain some confidence and you'll be like, hey, what's next? So I appreciate everyone for listening to this episode. And until the next one, everybody, keep getting after it. Thank you.